Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our much-awaited, hugely popular and inspirational chief guest. For far too long, across the world, we've heard the term self-made men. They've been sung to glory, they've been celebrated as symbols of success, as they should. However, today is the time for Nari Shakti, a new India where self-made women are the Brahmastra, the force that takes India to the next level. We're indebted to our chief guest this evening, Ms. Smriti Irani, to have taken out time with us. Ms. Rani has singularly defined what the prowess of self-made women has to be and where Indian women can take this great nation. You name it, she's achieved it, and she continues doing so. At every stage, she's defied the curve. She's scripted history as the youngest union cabinet minister. She's broken glass ceilings in politics, triumphed in areas where dynamic and dynastic politics had taken over. She's emerged victorious. Ms. Smriti Irani has inspired millions of Indians across the world. Her triumphant journey from screen to the halls of power, her unmatched connect with the people of India from the TV sets to ground zero, where she connects with the reality of each Indian. Her dedication to serving the nation through an empowerment-driven, reform-centered policy for women has been seen. She's a living and serving example of one who's dedicated herself to craft a new script for change in Naya Bharat, one that is powered by equality, that's powered by resilience, and powered what India's women claim is their rightful place in the world. Smriti Irani puts the spotlight on Nari Shakti, bold, resilient, and unyielding. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming Union Cabinet Minister for Women and Child Development,
purpose, unyielding determination,
and Minority Affairs, and Lok Sabha MP from Amethi.
हमारी सभ्यता में ये भी मान्यता है कि नव भवन में जब प्रवेश होता है तो पहला पैर घर की लक्ष्मी का होता है.
She is unstoppable.
मातृशक्ति गवर्नेंस का केंद्र बिंदु होना चाहिए, क्योंकि इन्हीं महिलाओं के माध्यम से प्रदेश और देश विकसित हो पाएगा.
She has converted adversity to achievement.
संविधान की मर्यादा की दृष्टि से देखें तो लक्ष्मी ने संवैधानिक स्वरूप लिया है इस अधिनियम के माध्यम से, जिसके लिए मैं सरकार का, इस सदन का और पीठ का विशेषता आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ.
She has taken Nari Shakti from slogan to ground delivery.
राष्ट्र सरकार के इस फैसले को स्वीकार करते हुए नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम को समर्थन देती है.
Honorable Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani unleashes the power within at the Republic India Women's Summit 2024.
A very good evening to the Republic from the podium of the Republic TV. As I look at the bold screen that speaks of women of mettle and women who have achieved much, at the onset, let me pay my salutation to every woman in this august gathering and those of us who know are watching at home. A special tribute to a generation of women before us who have struggled so that women like me have the capacity to stand firmly on our 2 feet and have wings that help our dreams take flight. A salutation to those in my generation who emerged from the shadows and today are at the forefront of what the Prime Minister of India says, the decade of women-led development. And also, my salutations to that young girl child who hopes that she brings not only change and exemplifies gender justice in our country, but also becomes a beacon of hope for all genders and all communities across the world. The torchbearers and the beneficiaries of Vikasit Bharat, to that girl child, to that young lady, my pranams this evening from the Republic. As I speak to you, ladies and a smattering of gentlemen, I am cognizant of the fact that today in the Parliament of India was presented a white paper that told the black story of a decade lost. A decade where we could have fructified our ambitions, our aspirations. A decade where dreams came to die. A decade where, irrespective of our region, our religion, we strived hoping that we will be delivered on the precipice of development. From that decade that was lost to now a decade under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi that has steadfastly taken us to a path where our resilience, our fortitude, our innovative and entrepreneurial spirit can define not only a future for us, but also one for global good. As I just glanced at the white paper that was presented today, what stupefied me was the fact that this country waited while in a decade that was lost under the UPA, led by the Congress party, hidden in their rhetoric was 3.8 lakh crores of bad financial assets. That in the decade that was lost opportunities, 14 social and rural sector ministries had a budget of 95,000 crores that was left unspent. That 6.4% of our national budget was left unspent, that too in segments that needed it the most. Helps us understand why I articulate the UPA era as the lost decade. That in that decade, the out-of-pocket expenditure for health nationally stood at 64.2%. That the lost decade, led by the Congress party, and I still remember that evening where a TV studio was lit in July 2012, but 62 crore Indians were left behind in pitch darkness, the largest ever power outage. That is the decade that we've emerged from towards the light of development. That many amongst you have heard the Prime Minister articulate how we emerged from the fragile 5 to now the 5th largest economy in the world. But if I gave this emergence a gender lens, what would that lens help us see? Ladies, for your consumption, I say this. This white paper may not possibly outline, however, it is in black and white written, that when the Congress-led UPA took office, across Government of India on the schemes for welfare for women, a measly 10,845 crore rupees was spent. That by the time the Congress left office and Modi became Pradhan Sevak, this year's budget, if you look at it from a gender perspective, has estimated a spend of 3.1 lakh crores. That is the jump, not only in numbers, but ambition. So when I look back at the decade that was lost, I remember in the year 2013 came a report which said that 6% of our GDP was negatively impacted because of lack of sanitation coverage. But what alarmed us even more is that when crime against women and numbers associated with it were studied, close to 40 to 44% of sexual assault on women in that lost decade led by the Congress Party, 40 to 44% of such assaults happened when women went out to defecate in the open. That this was not only a sanitation problem, this was not only a problem with regards to violence against women. This became a way of life for women who saw no hope. I would like to tell the august gathering here and those of our citizens who are watching us at home, no woman in the history of India has ever walked up to a politician to say, "I need a toilet." It was never a part of public discourse, or for that matter, even conversations in newsrooms, in summits like this. That from the ramparts of the Red Fort, when Modi became Pradhan Sevak, he said, "We all speak about development and empowerment of women, but do most women in our country begin their day with dignity?" And that is why in the history of our country, for the first time, we had a head of government imploring to the entire nation and state governments included, if we talk about ensuring dignity of women, can we begin by building a simple toilet? Something which had no political glamour attached to it, something that never assured a vote bank, something that was not a part of popular or social discourse, became the clarion call for a country of 1 billion plus. Who knew that one day as a nation we will rejoice the fact that we have built 110 million toilets? But what was the multiplier effect? The Prime Minister in that very speech said, "Do we not know that young girls drop out of schools because they don't have a separate toilet access? That they cringe and they wait and they struggle, but they do not speak of their discomfort. Can we look at education institutions having the same facility so that we can curb dropouts amongst the young girls?" And in that, the Prime Minister gave a dedicated timeline. He said, if we have the tenacity, let's build in every government school a separate toilet for young girls in 1 year. I would like to remind you it was one line in a speech that spoke about freedom and independence. But for the first time in the history of our country, we had the man at the helm talking about that young girl who was uncomfortable at school only because she did not have this simple infrastructural intervention. That education is a partnership between the center and the state may not be known to many, but that the Prime Minister could inspire collaboration and have over 4 lakh toilets built only in government schools, only so that girls don't drop out, speaks volumes of our capacity as a country. I must say this, every step of the Prime Minister put the needs and aspirations of women at the center. For he knew the potential that can be unlocked if you look at women as equal partners and not as recipients of hand-me-downs. And that is when the Prime Minister, when he said, can we open a bank account for every Indian citizen who is thus far unbanked? Who knew? 24 crore women in our country never had a bank account. That not only was a bank account opened, and as the Honorable President of India recently in her address to both Houses of Parliament said, 32 lakh crore rupees went directly from the Indian Treasury into bank accounts of Indian citizens who were thus far unbanked. But what did it unleash with regards to women? The Mudra Yojana was not a gendered financial instrument. That it was espoused to help people with small businesses who wanted credit without collateral so that they can prosper. And lo and behold, of all the Mudra loans given, 70% of the beneficiaries turned out to be women. Now for many, this might just be a number, but imagine this, ladies and gentlemen. Who took Mudra loans? Not women in corporate India, not women with PhDs, not women with master's degrees. These were simple women from the rural backgrounds, from slums with smaller cities. And what did they do? They each created a business plan. They each walked up to a bank. Each of them could convince a bank official that this business plan works. Not only did they get the loan then, I today proudly, not as minister but as a woman, say the NPA of female entrepreneurs in the Mudra segment taught us somewhere around 2%. Fiscal discipline, better that many are corporations led by men. This revolution was spoken of by the Honorable President in her recent address, where she speaks about 30 crore Mudra loans, but each number is a revolution unto itself. Then somebody spoke about Stand Up India and said, well, let's not look at credits only of 10,000, 50,000, 10 lakhs. What if we give 1 crore? And what if, let's say we find one woman per district? The Prime Minister said, why only one woman? Any woman who wants it, who has the capacity to service a 1 crore loan, give it. And I proudly say today that of the 40,000 crore rupees that went as credit, again under Stand Up India, 80% of the beneficiaries turned out to be women. That being said, how many amongst us, and I'm 47, in my age bracket, when we were back in school, remember that time of the month where we would tell one of our classmates to check whether our garment is stained? I can see the smiles of ladies here. The younger generation may not have faced it, but women my generation, possibly in the 30s, I don't know about the 20-somethings, have gone through it. Why? Because you would not want to walk about and have somebody point a finger at you and say, is it that time of the month? Now can you imagine in a nation where we hid our garments, which possibly may be stained because of our menstrual cycle? Here we have a Prime Minister stand in the ramparts of the Red Fort during Independence Day and say, 1 rupee sanitary pads are available across all Jan Aushadhi Kendras. That there is no shame attached. If a woman wants what is her determined right, access to affordable menstrual hygiene products. Again, an issue not spoken of often, but here we have somebody at the head of our government normalizing that conversation to say, this is in no way a challenge to a woman's narrative or her progress. I do see that men in this room are bringing their eyebrows together and wondering, what's the big deal about it? Well, you have to be born a woman to understand what I'm talking about. Ladies, world over we know that reproductive rights of women make for political landmines. Not spoken of, agitated against, but I consider myself a very, very proud Indian when the Prime Minister says that if a lady wants medical termination of pregnancy in 24 weeks, let her be protected by law, and in both houses of parliament, that bill passes without a murmur from any man in this country. The self-help group revolution in our country, many say, has a very distinct past. But how do you galvanize a grassroots social instrument and make it brim with economic pride? That today we have 10 crore women who now encompass close to 90 lakh self-help groups in the country is a given. That they have from Prime Minister Modi received 8 lakh crore rupees in the past 9 years of his government. But what is for us a matter of great pride and celebration is that every year this collective of women manage an annual fiscal strength of $37 billion. So when the Prime Minister stands in Parliament and says, now self-help group women will not only be limited to doing grassroots economic activity, but also fly drones, that is a tectonic shift. Additionally, I think what is a matter of great joy is that the Prime Minister, during the Independence Day speech, spoke about 2 crore self-help group women in our country becoming Lakpati Didis. And only now, in his address, as gratitude for the President's address, the Prime Minister informs the country 1 crore women have already become Lakpati Didis. Now we are aiming at 3 crore women. The ambition, the partnership between women of this country and their Prime Minister is historic. Speaking of drones and women that fly, while we had the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces take salutations and salutes from women in all roles, ranks and services this Republic Day, I'm also cognizant of the fact that the President of India has very humble origins, that she is the first girl in her village in Odisha who studied beyond Standard 5. That in her life's journey, she became an MLA, a minister, lost a Lok Sabha election, became the first ever female governor of Jharkhand, is the 3rd president ever in our country who has done a sortie in a fighter jet, her recent adventures with the Sukhoi. But imagine, her entire life's journey was about finding political space. Imagine her satisfaction, her pride. When the government of India, under the aegis of the Parliament, could present to her the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, 33% reservation for women in this country. Imagine her pride. Imagine her pride as a Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, when, yes, she sees veteran and personnel currently in service received 1 rank, 1 pension, receive the best of support and supplies from the Government of India, but also at the helm, she sees women with permanent commission in the armed forces. Imagine her pride. And speaking of pride, there is a lady in the audience I would now point out to. They say our missions are sometimes called mom. That we can go to Mars on the dark side of the moon on a budget which is possibly less expensive than a Tom Cruise movie. But at the helm of it were the women at ISRO. That the lady who, not from the lens of gender, but from the lens of science, looked at the sun, and sitting here bright amongst us, Nigar Shahji, a big round of applause for her. So as the President received salutations, salutes from women in all ranks, roles and services, was the tableau of ISRO with its genuine female scientist, taking the Kartavya Path with a sense of pride and gratitude. And these are the stories that make this summit special. Bold, resilient, unyielding. That is the woman of India. Prime Minister Modi says that our resilience, our achievements, our aspirations may not be the fruits of success that we keep only to ourselves. Let us take our lessons and let's share it with the world. And that is exactly what India did when we had the presidency of the G20. Never before in the history of G20 was the agenda of women mainstreamed. Left to the sidelines of some of the biggest financial powers and governments of the world, only civil society discussed women's issues. And Prime Minister Modi made it his personal agenda that if G20 walks away, in its mainstayed agenda will be women-led development for all nations, all economies. That is the contribution of the People's Prime Minister. That is the contribution of Indian women to the G20 discourse. So as you sit here for the summit, bold, resilient, unyielding, I know that this summit also hopes that your dreams take a digital flight. And that, ladies and a smattering of gentlemen, is where the next chapter of the India story will be told. Who knew that women who are street vendors would use the UPI with the LAN? Who knew that women in fintech, in startups, would push against historical challenges and say, I am now creating a table of my own, for you deny me a chair at yours. So for those who are creating new rooms for conversation, new tables for negotiation, let me leave a little plea. We know what it feels like to be denied, just because we've been women. Let the men know that we play a fairer game. So to all those who are now participative in this decade of development, who will now contribute to India rising to becoming the third largest economy in the world, let us proudly say that we become a part of the generation that assures that in 2047, this land will be called Vikasit Bharat. So the ambassadors of change, to the daredevils who dream, my heartiest congratulations for being a part of the summit. And thank you, Republic. This becomes possibly the first time that Arnab Goswami has paused to hear the voice of the women of India in prime time. Back in the studio to Arnab, thank you.